Unexpected encounter, single mom's amazing twist at a billionaire's wedding reveals hidden twins. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced at the ornate invitation in her hand. The curls of gold ink on the heavy cardstock spoke of a world far removed from her life as a waitress and part-time bookstore clerk. This lavish wedding, her former high school friend James marrying a socialite, made her envy seethe beneath her skin. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, scanning the ballroom, her thrifted dress feeling inadequate amidst the sea of designer gowns. She was just a single mother from a quaint New England town, carrying the weight of bills in her pockets and the dreams of her creative twin boys, Ethan and Noah, in her heart. The moment she stepped through the grand entrance, laughter and swirling lights enveloped her, tightening the knot of anxiety in her stomach. 6 years since her husband had walked out, and her life had folded into routine chaos, balancing her boys' imaginations with the grind of making ends meet. This invitation was a glimpse into what could have been if she had followed a different path. Yet, the tingling nostalgia mixed bitterly with the fears of unworthiness. As Sarah maneuvered through the crowd, she felt eyes on her: curiosity, pity, judgment. They fluttered across her as sharply as knives. Just then, she locked eyes with James, who was gliding towards her with an unmistakable grin. Their conversation sparked with warmth, an old flame igniting in the smog of her insecurities. Yet as they reminisced, her pulse quickened when James spoke of the charity he defunded. It had become a lifeline for her when her world had crumbled. Did he know? Did she tell him? Before she could comprehend the rush of gratitude threatening to spill from her lips, the twins burst into the grand ballroom, cheeks flushed with mischief and excitement. The laughter around them dimmed, and Sarah's heart sank. There was no way James could miss them, those eager and familiar faces. The shock washed over him, morphing the snickers of the guests into a heavy silence. Suddenly, the fantasy spun rapidly back into stark reality. James stared, bewildered, their father unknowing of the boys he had never met. Her breath caught, half ready to explain yet fully terrified to shatter the delicate moment. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tension crackled in the air. Should she hold on to this fragile connection with James or unravel the truth tangled in years of hurt and hope? The delightful evening spiraled towards anguish as Sarah weighed the weight of her silence against the potential fallout of a truth that had defined her life. The twins' innocent excitement only amplified her guilt. How could she deny them this chance to connect with their father? And yet, could she bear to risk the emotional bond blooming between James and herself? As she struggled to grasp control, Sarah felt as if she were teetering on the edge of a precipice, the answer rolling on her tongue, but lost beneath the swell of the night's music. Would revealing their identities destroy her already unraveling realm of dreams? The orchestra crescendoed around her, and all that filled her mind was uncertainty, a tightrope walk between joy and despair, waiting for the fateful choice that could change everything forever. The swirling din of the ballroom became a blur as Sarah's mind raced. She gazed at James, uncertainty etched in every feature of his face. It felt surreal, this reunion, and to have her sons burst into this moment only magnified her fears. What would happen if she divulged the truth, unleashing a whirlwind of emotions and reactions she couldn't predict? Ethan and Noah bounded toward her, their laughter like sunlight piercing through the heavy clouds of her anxiety. They were the embodiment of her struggles and victories, wild spirits ready to embrace the world. But she could feel the weight of societal judgment pressing in their presence could render her either a heroine or a fool in the eyes of the guests. "Mommy, look! That cake is huge!" Ethan squealed, tugging at her dress as Noah twinkled his eyes with mischief, oblivious to the tension surrounding them. She knelt to their level, desperation clawing at her throat. How could she explain the complexity of their father to two innocent boys, especially when she herself was entangled in the aftermath of decisions made years ago? The worry must have shown on her face because Noah asked, "Are we going to meet him?" James's expression was a whirlpool of confusion and intrigue, kindling something deep within Sarah. Could he really want to know them? She hesitated, the clock in her mind ticking down the moments before this delicate balance of hope and fear shattered completely. "Maybe we should go outside for a bit," she finally managed, forcing a smile that felt foreign. She took a steadying breath and led her twins away from the throng of guests. James hesitated, then followed, his curiosity compelling him. They stepped out onto the terrace, where the night sky sprawled infinitely above, starlit and serene. It was a stark contrast to the chaos they'd just left behind. Sarah took a moment to collect herself, her heart pounding not only with anxiety but with the burgeoning will to be honest no matter the outcome. "James," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "There's something important I need to tell you." He paused, waiting with palpable intensity, as if he could sense the gravity of what she was about to reveal. Sarah's palms were clammy, and she wiped them on her dress. This was the moment she had dreaded and anticipated all at once. "Ethan and Noah," she took a deep breath, "they're your sons." Silence enveloped them, stretching infinitely as James stared at her, his expression morphing from surprise to disbelief. The twins shifted uncomfortably, sensing the heaviness suffocating the air around them. "You're not joking, are you?" His voice was low, but the shock in it echoed. "No," she whispered, heart racing, "would never joke about something like this. I didn't know how to tell you." The realization hit him like a tidal wave, and Sarah braced herself for his reaction. Would he reject them? Would he feel anger, disappointment, or could there be a shred of understanding hidden within his response? "Why didn't you say anything before?" he demanded, but there was no malice, only deep-seated concern. "I was scared," she confessed, vulnerability slashing through the armor she had built over the years. "I thought you wouldn't want to know. Or worse, that I'd ruin everything for you." As they stood on that terrace, Sarah felt a shift within herself. The walls she had constructed, brick by brick, now trembled under the weight of truth. It was a risk, yes, but it also stirred something long buried in her, a desire to face her past and embrace her present. James's gaze softened as he took in the twins, their innocent faces beaming up at him, filled with hope. In that moment, clarity emerged, a realization dawned that she, too, needed this. "What do we do now?" he finally asked, the incredulity in his voice tinged with a spark of determination, and just like that, Sarah felt the horizon of her life shift. They were on the precipice of something new, an unexpected journey fraught with potential. But as she opened her mouth to speak again, a chilling thought struck her. What if revealing their connection would bring people from her past rushing back in? Those shadowed figures filled with resentment and judgment, ready to disrupt the fragile harmony she had just begun to weave. Could she truly navigate this newfound dynamic without losing everything she cherished? The air thickened with unspoken possibilities, and all Sarah could do was clutch her sons tighter, holding on tightly as a storm brewed on the edges of their shared future. The night air was cool against Sarah's skin, but inside she felt a swirling tempest of emotion. The weight of her truth hung heavily between them, an invisible thread binding her past to the present. Each second stretched, demanding clarity. She could almost hear her heart echoing with the need for resolution. "James," she began slowly, her voice quivering despite her effort to sound composed. "What I just told you changes everything." "And wait," he interrupted, holding up a hand as if to catch her words before they escaped. "Before we go any further, I need to process this. I had no idea. I honestly can't believe it." His gaze shifted between the twins and Sarah, forming a bridge of connection that was fraught with potential yet terrifying in its implications. The questions flooded her mind, but at that moment, all she could focus on was the tangible reality in front of her, the warmth of Ethan's tiny hand in hers, Noah's bright eyes reflecting innocence and hope. In this moment, they were hers alone, but she could no longer shield them from their father. Or from the world. Maybe we should sit, Sarah suggested, seeking refuge in the peace of the terrace, away from the relentless clamor of the ballroom. She carefully positioned herself beside the boys, inviting James to join them as if they were a family unit, however fragile. Much as she wanted to, she couldn't ignore the silence that loomed. It was a silence thick with destiny, the kind that could alter the course of lives. James fidgeted, his concentration splintered as he regarded them, then turned his thoughts inward, reflecting on both the past they shared and the future that stretched ahead of them. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked, his voice low yet steady. The earnestness in his tone struck a chord within her. It was not just a question, it was an invitation to define their collective path. In that moment, she needed to be honest not just with him, but with herself. "I want you to know them," she replied, choosing her words with caution. "They deserve to know their father. I've shielded them from so much, but I can't do it anymore. Not when they're so full of life and curiosity." Her voice wavered, but steadying her breathing calmed her racing thoughts. James seemed to absorb her plea, his face reflecting a mix of disbelief and dawning responsibility. She wondered if he saw the dimensions of their struggle, the layers of decisions that had led them to this point. She felt the urgent need for him to see beyond this moment, to lay the groundwork for what their connection could become. "I want to be a part of their lives," he said, the resolution in his voice grounding her swirling anxiety. "But I don't want to disrupt what you've created. I don't know how this works, I've never been a father. You don't have to have all the answers right now." The tension within Sarah softened slightly. It was a bit daunting, but she could see a way forward in their vulnerability, both of them learning how to navigate this tangled web together. As they conversed, Sarah felt the sharp edges of her fear dulling, reshaped by the power of open dialogue. Could this be the beginning of cooperation, growth, and familial bonding instead of confrontation? Yet a nagging fear lingered, a phantom reminder of the ghosts from her past, and the judgment that could crash down like a storm. Past decisions had reverberated loudly, echoing warnings of potential heartbreak. Would they emerge to cloud this opportunity? The idea settled uneasily, twitching like a dormant thread she had thought buried. She watched James's expressions shift, contemplating his newfound role while catching glimpses of her boys, how they eagerly sought connection, and how easily hope flourished within them amidst uncertainty. "This is all so sudden," he murmured, his voice trailing off as if he feared voicing every doubt. "But I'm willing to try. I want to understand and help, but... She echoed, sensing an important crossroads forming. "There are still things you haven't told me, aren't there?" Once more, vulnerability washed over her, mingling with her resolve. Would that be her hesitance to explain what remained concealed? Could she risk unveiling the truth, allowing him to see how the shadows of her past could potentially eclipse their future? Recognizing that she was at a crucial moment of choice, she felt her throat tighten. "Maybe it's time we both faced what we've been avoiding," she conceded, her heart pounding as they teetered on the brink of unveiling more than just their familial connection. She had opened the door, but could she step through into the unknown, holding tightly to her sons and the newfound potential that lay before them? The question hung perilously in the air as the stars began to flicker ominously against the vastness of the sky, aligning yet seemingly disconnected, much like her own fragmented life and the re-emerging challenge of her past. In the fading glow of twilight, Sarah felt her vulnerability tangle with a renewed sense of purpose. The deeper truths sat heavy on her tongue, pressing for release while a cacophony of doubts threatened to drown her voice. Everything hinged on her next words, not just for her, but for the future she envisioned for Ethan and Noah. Taking a deep breath, she glanced at her children nestled beside her, their wide eyes reflecting trust and an innocent curiosity. She turned to James, seeing both a flicker of uncertainty and the weight of responsibility in his expression. How far could she lean on this freshly forged connection before it pulled away, unraveling the fragile tapestry they were attempting to weave? "I haven't just been protecting them from you," she began, her voice steadying to a firm resolve. "I've been protecting them from the mistakes we both made, mistakes that could easily surface and dismantle the life I've built for them." The honesty brought forth a rush of adrenaline, a feeling she had long sought but often shied away from during the past tumultuous years. James's gaze intensified, his posture shifting as the implications of her words settled between them. "What do you mean?" 3 months after I found out I was pregnant, I was forced to leave. I had no choice but to protect myself and my children from a legacy that wasn't just uncertain, but she faltered, grappling with the prospect of revealing it all. Then she steeled herself, to protect them from a family history that could threaten our happiness. Silence thickened in the air, the weight of her confession hanging like a storm cloud overhead. She did not want to taint what they could build together by dragging in the shadows of her past. Yet, in that moment, something clicked within her. They'd either face the shadows together or be consumed by them. "Tell me everything," James urged, his voice firm yet gentle, igniting a flicker of hope within her that perhaps they could navigate this tangled web after all. Opening the floodgates of her memory felt like releasing a dam. "I come from a family marked by instability and chaos. Decisions were wrongly made, and trust was frequently broken," she confessed, her heart racing. "I made the choice to break away to ensure my children had a different life, a better one." As she elaborated on the course of her youthful decisions, the whispers of betrayal, the fracture of trust, she could sense James's growing understanding, but she also noticed the concern etched in his features. Doubt tugged at him, yet there was also a determination. "Sarah," he interrupted gently, "you shouldn't feel like you need to bear this alone. If you can trust me with this piece of your past, I want to help carry that weight too." His words, laced with earnestness, kindled something within her, a growing ember of belief that they could confront the past and create a future. But the truth remained still buried, a powerful secret layered beneath their initial connection. "We have to be careful. If my past were to resurface, it could jeopardize everything, even the twins," she whispered, feeling the severity of her reality sink in again. "No matter what happens, I will not turn away from them." "Or you," he affirmed, the conviction in his voice causing a swell of warmth in her chest. Yet, the nagging uncertainty remained a question that loomed ominously between them. "But can we truly build something new without confronting what lies ahead? Without facing the reality of what was?" Sarah questioned, her resolve wavering. James's eyes narrowed thoughtfully, the gears of his mind clearly turning. "If we're both in, then we face it together, regardless of the risks. But accepting that you've made choices in line with your values is critical. It's about stepping forward, not retreating." As his words sank in, Sarah recognized her own reluctance mirrored in his face. She was driving toward growth, yet deeply afraid of what revelations could come to light. This was not just a family reunion, it was a reconfiguration of their past traumas, delicately layered with discovery. "Facing them could risk everything we're trying to build," she cautioned, the revealing fear snaking through her defenses. "And ignoring them?" he countered firmly. "That'll do far worse." This conversation marked a fundamental shift. Moments earlier, they had been merely contemplating co-parenting awkwardly, and now they were exploring a maze of memories and responsibilities. Each revelation they exchanged carved a path forward that wove connection and complexity into something fragile yet promising. As the shadows grew longer and the stars brightened overhead, a fierce determination ignited within her. "Perhaps facing this truth could give us a stronger foundation," Sarah finally conceded, glancing again at her boys, whose fates were inexplicably intertwined with her choices. The air crackled with uncertainty, and she realized they were stepping into a territory neither had navigated yet. Would they emerge from this exploration stronger for it, or would it fracture their tenuous bond? By uncovering these truths, we may discover areas of ourselves we've kept hidden from even ourselves, James stated, his eyes alight with an unexpected vision. And in that moment, a new essence began forming within Sarah, one that blended trepidation with possibility. But there loomed a darker obstacle ahead, one much more menacing than her past could ever be, the impending confrontation with her family's secrets. What lay in that darkness could shatter the fragile bond they had begun to craft. She felt the chill wind wrap around her, tightening her grip on her resolve. What if facing those buried fears not only altered their chaos but transformed them entirely? And in that moment of fear and hope, she understood her next choice would frame their shared future, and as shadows danced under the night sky, she wondered, would she have the courage to step fully into the light, embracing all that was yet to come, or would the secrets of her past silence her voice once more? The days that followed were marked by a tense anticipation. Each morning, Sarah awoke with the weight of unspoken truths hanging over her like a shroud, while the sunlight streamed in, illuminating the warmth of her home. She tucked the boys in tightly, their laughter resonating with innocence, often serving as a reminder of her commitment to protect them. Yet, each joyful sound silenced her inner turmoil, a cacophony of fear and hope. Ethan and Noah had taken to James with an ease that both comforted and unsettled her. The boys, unaware of the labyrinth of secrets stretching through their family tree, approached his presence with curiosity as if he were a new riddle waiting to be solved. For Sarah, each smile exchanged between James and her children felt like another thread woven into the delicate fabric of trust they were building. It both thrilled and terrified her. As she stood in the kitchen preparing breakfast one morning, the haze of uncertainty swirled around her. Could she trust him entirely? What if the truths she had yet to disclose broke the fragile connection they'd begun forming? Yet, something about his sincerity stirred a determination within her. Maybe this was the moment to seize, a moment to step forward rather than retreat. "Mom, can we go to the park today?" Noah's voice broke through her thoughts, glimmering with the contagious energy only children could possess. A smile painted across her lips at his enthusiasm. "Absolutely. Let me finish making breakfast, and then we can head out." With the boys happily munching on their toast, Sarah found herself glancing at James, who had also joined them at the table. A nervous energy brewed in her chest, compelling her to take a step she had been avoiding. "James," she began slowly, the words pooling at the back of her throat, "I think we need to talk more about everything." "Everything?" he probed, leaning in, the intensity of his gaze urging her to continue. "Yes, about my past. About what I've kept hidden." The weight of her confession hung heavy in the air. She could almost detect the shudder of her own heartbeat. His expression softened. "Whenever you're ready, I'm here to listen. You won't be alone in this. We'll face it together." The promise behind his words awakened a sense of trust she hadn't fully accepted yet. Perhaps confronting her past alongside James would establish a foundation strong enough to withstand the storms threatened by her family's history. But the thought made her pulse race and her stomach plunge. Did she have the strength to confront not only her family but her own insecurities? Later that afternoon at the park, she watched as Noah and Ethan soared down the slide while James engaged them in playful banter. There was a lightness in the air surrounding them, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within her mind. It felt almost wrong to intrude on this moment with heavy truths, but, as the sunlight shifted and the evening shadows crept forward, Sarah recognized she wouldn't have this peace for long. The shadows would eventually catch up, and she would have to face them both for herself and for her children. As the boys raced back to her side, laughter filling the space between them, an idea began to solidify. Maybe she could transform her fears into a catalyst for growth. Leaning into this newfound perspective could reveal hidden aspects of herself, ones she had long dismissed. When the sun began to set, and the sky morphed into a palette of twilight colors, Sarah felt a stirring in her heart, an unfiltered resolve to seek clarity, not just for her family but for herself. She needed to sweep away the cobwebs of her history and discover the woman she was meant to be, not shackled by her past but propelled forward by it. As they wandered home, hand in hand, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Could she truly harness this understanding, transforming it into personal empowerment? But even as she clung to that possibility, a nagging thought lingered. What if the truths she unearthed were too heavy, too damaging? Far too personal to share? The question loomed ominously, intertwining with Sarah's resolve to step into the light. Would she find the courage to unravel the knot of secrets and share not only her history but also the intricacies of her life with the man she was learning to trust? The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet, as she glanced up at the evening sky, she felt the first stirrings of enlightenment, a promise that bracing for the truth might just lead her to a greater understanding of herself. With every step closer to confronting her past, the pivotal moment drew nearer, and she knew within her heart that she had to prepare for the inevitable clash between her hidden fears and the vulnerable truths shrouding her identity. The following morning, the dawn cast an almost ethereal glow through the curtains, illuminating the small kitchen where Sarah stood alone. The boys were asleep, their dreams undisturbed, a tranquility that oddly juxtaposed her internal chaos. She had promised herself, promised James, that she would confront her past, yet the idea of peeling back the layers of her hidden truths left her feeling exposed and raw. Digging through past wounds had never been on her agenda, yet here it loomed ominously. As she whisked eggs with mechanical precision, her mind darted through various memories, moments steeped in both joy and pain. Shadows of her childhood danced in her thoughts, remnants of a life she thought she had left behind. Each memory carried a weight, a burden intertwined with guilt and confusion. Could she unravel this tangled thread without losing everything? Suddenly, the clamor of the boys awakened her from her reverie, their laughter piercing through the fog of her uncertain thoughts. Her heart fluttered with both affection and dread. How could she uncover her truths when her primary responsibility was to shield them from the darkness that might spill over? Yet, the very act of hiding felt like a betrayal. "Mom, can we go on an adventure today?" Noah's small voice broke through her contemplation, pulling her back into the moment. "What kind of adventure?" she asked, forcing a smile, even as her insides twisted. "Exploring. We can go to that cool creek near the big trees," Ethan added enthusiastically, his eyes sparkling with excitement. A creeping thought clawed at her conscience. Would this be just another day filled with distractions, avoiding the inevitable confrontation that awaited her? But then again, could she actually face the truths without some semblance of strength and camaraderie from her children? Finding balance between her own journey and her role as a mother felt daunting, yet necessary. "Let us do it. We need some fresh air." The words left her mouth before she could second-guess herself, the decision bringing a flicker of relief. As they trekked to the creek, Sarah decided to use the day to explore not just nature, but the budding relationships around her. Watching the boys as they splashed in shallow waters, she felt a momentary peace settle over her. There was a raw beauty in their innocence, a reminder of life's potential unmarked by the past, yet that calmness was soon disrupted by an unexpected visitor. The sheer surprise on Sarah's face matched the boys as they spotted an unfamiliar figure approaching. It was a woman, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, carrying an air of authority mingled with warmth. Sarah's heart raced, she recognized her instantly. It was one of her estranged relatives, a member of a family she had cut ties with years prior. "Sarah?" The woman's voice was forward, yet carried the tremor of uncertainty. The figure was a reminder of the very ties Sarah had aimed to sever. Memories flooded back from behind a fog of hurt, family gatherings laced with unspoken criticism and hidden judgments. "Lisa," Sarah replied, her voice taut, caught between emotions. What was she doing here? Were the threads of her past fraying, or had they simply returned to entangle her once more? "Is everything all right?" Lisa's gaze dropped to the boys, quickly assessing the scene. "I came looking for you. We need to talk." At the mention of "we need to talk," Sarah felt a mix of vigilance and anger surging inside her. She was not ready for this confrontation, not here, not now, and certainly not alone. Yet, the boys were oblivious, continuing their joy in the water, oblivious to the storm brewing. "Not here," Sarah responded through clenched teeth, a protective instinct igniting within her. Lisa hesitated, and Sarah could see questions swirling in her eyes, but she maintained her ground. The confrontation had to happen eventually, but this was her moment to breathe. Navigating the complexities of her familial bonds and the shadows of her past was a delicate process she had yet to master. As she turned her back on her relative, questions lingered heavily in the air. Was this encounter a harbinger of dark secrets resurfacing? Or was it yet another chance to reclaim her narrative and refuse to let her history dictate her future? The day had shifted from a simple outing to a poignant reminder that honesty was not just about her truths, but also about navigating the connections that fed into them. Standing strong before both her past and present, she realized she could not dance around her fears any longer. Tomorrow loomed like an unanswered question, wrapped in uncertainty and possibility. Would she confront Lisa head-on, ready to peel back the layers, or retreat back to safety, letting her fears hold her hostage once more? The sun hung high in the sky as Sarah gathered the boys, determination coursing through her veins. The creek had been the sanctuary, a fleeting escape from the reality she now had to face. Lisa remained an immediate shadow in her thoughts, a specter of family ties and unresolved pain. The comfort of the water and the sounds of happy splashes faded into the background, replaced by the steady beat of her heart. "Let us head home," Sarah said, her voice steady but her mind a whirlwind of doubts. The boys' cheerful chatter echoed around her, oblivious to the undercurrents of tension enveloping their mother. What was she going to say to Lisa? What depths would this confrontation plunge her into? When they returned home, Sarah's stomach twisted with a mix of anxiety and resolve. She needed to prepare herself for a conversation that threatened to unearth a past she had buried for too long. Closing her eyes, she took a moment to gather her thoughts. She had survived the chaos of motherhood, surely, she could tackle a confronting conversation. "Do you want some snacks before we do some crafting?" She called to the boys, trying to latch onto any normalcy that would ease her frazzled mind. "Can we make dinosaurs?" Noah asked innocently, the sparkle in his eyes a stark contrast to the apprehension suffocating Sarah. "Of course," she replied, masking her fear beneath a smile. As she laid out art supplies, her thoughts spiraled back to Lisa. The well-remembered ache of family judgment stirred within her, rekindling the resentment she thought she had overcome. Yet perhaps it was precisely this connection, twisted as it was, that she needed to embrace for her own growth. The crafting session became a grounding exercise. As paper scraps and glue turned into brontosauruses and velociraptors, Sarah experienced fleeting moments of joy. These moments reminded her of her purpose, of nurturing her children's innocence, even amidst the tumult of her own tumultuous feelings. As the day wore on, adrenaline surged through her. "What are you doing?" her internal voice questioned. She felt a twinge of guilt for postponing this familial rendezvous. They weren't just mundane interactions, they were opportunities for her to evolve, for the boys to learn resilience. Later that evening, as the boys settled into their bedtime routine, Sarah found her mind racing. She pulled out a notebook and pen, a tool for her to organize the mess of thoughts cascading through her. The ink glided across the paper while probing questions formed in her mind. What did she want from this interaction? Closure? Clarity? Perhaps strength to redefine the contours of those affiliations. With her heart pounding in her chest, she jotted down what was essential: stand strong, control the narrative, no more hiding. Each phrase breathed life into her resolve, morphing the daunting confrontation into a challenge worth facing instead of a past best forgotten. The risk of hurt was real, but so was the potential for personal emancipation. Soon, the boys' soft breaths filled the room, easing her anxious spirit, momentarily silencing the inner chaos. Sarah visualized her confrontation with Lisa as a tightrope walk, one filled with peril yet promising of growth and potential. She knew she had to prepare her emotional safety net, but also acknowledged that falling could also lead to new beginnings, new truths emerging from the tangled web of family dynamics. As she closed her notebook, the familiar chill of anticipation crept into her bones. The moment of truth was fast approaching, but alongside fear, Sarah felt a piercing sense of empowerment. Tomorrow, she would confront the woman who symbolized so much of her unresolved history. With a renewed sense of purpose, she finally felt ready. Or did she? Just as she contemplated her resolve, her phone buzzed with an incoming message, an unexpected craving for clarity, perhaps. Panic swept over her when she recognized the sender. Lisa. Would this be the first push needed to topple the facades she had built? As she stared at the screen, the words "we need to talk soon" seemed to pulsate, promising revelations that could alter the course of her future yet again. What would this conversation unveil? The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting soft patterns on the bedroom wall. Sarah stirred, the remnants of last night's anxiety still clinging to her. She bolted upright, urgency sparking her into action. Today was the day. Her heart raced as she remembered Lisa's message, every word a weight pressing upon her chest. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the resolve she had meticulously crafted the night before. Determined to confront her past, Sarah moved through her morning routine with a mechanical precision, fighting the urge to dwell on the chaos swirling in her mind. The boys were her focal point, their laughter and carefree antics anchoring her to the present. "Mommy, can we go outside after breakfast?" Daniel's exuberant voice echoed through the kitchen. "Absolutely. Just after you finish your pancakes," she replied, forcing a smile as she whisked together the batter. Cooking had long been a rhythmic solace, a space where she could find small moments of normality amid the storm brewing within. As she served breakfast, though, a nagging whisper in her mind insisted that this ordinary morning was anything but. Monkeying with the pancakes, her thoughts drifted back to her conversation with Lisa. In that instant, the familiarity of the kitchen morphed into a battleground where unresolved issues would meet her head-on. "Focus, Sarah. You're stronger than this." The boys devoured their breakfast, oblivious to their mother's tightening grip around her fork. After they cleared the table, Sarah took a moment to breathe deeply, catching her reflection in the window. The eyes staring back at her were determined, though doubt lingered like a shadow. "You guys ready to go outside?" she asked, shaking off her tension, channeling it into her enthusiasm for their day. After some playtime in the backyard, Sarah found herself perched on a bench, watching the boys chase each other. The simplicity of their joy illuminated a flicker of hope in her heart. They represented everything good in her life, everything she had to protect. They inspired her to reclaim control over her narrative. Later in the afternoon, her phone buzzed again, pulling her attention like a magnet. Lisa was calling. The world around her seemed to freeze as she debated whether to answer. This was the moment she had anticipated, but part of her yearned to postpone. Taking a steadying breath, she swiped to accept the call. "Sarah," Lisa began, her tone surprisingly soft. "It's been a while since we talked. Can we meet?" The question hung in the air. Sarah's instincts flared she should agree, to confront this unresolved tension. Yet, apprehension crept in. What if Lisa only wanted to dig up the past? Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, grappling with the surge of emotions. "Sure, when?" she managed to reply, steeling herself for the answer. "How about later today? Around 3? The urgency in Lisa's voice stirred a mix of anticipation and dread within Sarah. "All right," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. They agreed on a cafe, a neutral ground that felt oddly akin to a battlefield. As soon as they hung up, a rush of uncertainty washed over her. What would she say? Would she keep her resolve? Was she merely stepping into another trap woven by their tumultuous history? Several hours ticked by, each minute dragging heavier than the last as she busied herself with household tasks, the ever-looming weight of their impending encounter overshadowing everything. But in those fleeting moments, a flicker of determination ignited within her, a subtle yet defiant reminder that this was not just about Lisa, it was about Sarah reclaiming her voice, setting the narrative straight. As the clock mercilessly approached 3, she dressed intentionally, reflecting strength and purpose. Today would not be a concession, it would be an assertion of her identity, a stand against the trepidation that had held her for too long. Driving to the cafe, adrenaline coursed through her veins. Each stoplight felt interminable. The possibility of confrontation gnawed at her, but it was too late to turn back now. The moment she stepped out of the car, the world blurred into the background. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself. Inside, Lisa awaited an echo of the past, but Sarah was no longer the girl who had been overshadowed by familial ties. As she pushed through the door, her heart raced. Would she find clarity in confrontation, or merely unearth old wounds? But as she glimpsed Lisa sitting at a corner table, a new question simmered beneath the surface. What truths were about to emerge, and how would they shape the world she was constructing for herself and her boys? The cafe buzzed with muted conversations, the hum of clinking porcelain punctuating the air, yet all those sounds faded into insignificance when Sarah's gaze locked onto Lisa. There she sat, her posture exuding a blend of confidence and trepidation, a reminder of the tumultuous past they shared. Sarah's palms felt clammy as she approached, each step rehearsing an infinite loop of doubts in her mind. "Hey," Sarah greeted, her voice steadier than she felt. The words felt like stones weighing heavy on her tongue. "Hey, thanks for coming," Lisa replied, her smile a fragile mask over uncertainty. Sarah settled into the chair opposite her, bracing for the inevitable plunge into uncomfortable territory. "I wasn't sure if you really wanted to meet," Sarah began, unable to hide the sharpness of her skepticism. "This isn't just about you and me," Lisa countered, directing the conversation into an unexpected lane. "It's about the kids too. This affects them." Sarah stiffened at the mention of the boys. Every decision she had made revolved around protecting their innocence, their joy, and the sacred bond she had built with them amid all life's chaos. The discomfort coiled in her stomach as she prepared to confront the unspoken tension that lingered between them. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, uncertain yet curious about where the conversation would lead. Lisa took a breath, collecting her thoughts before speaking. "I've been reflecting on things. My own struggles, missing my family. I think it's time we clarify our histories, especially when it comes to the boys." The urgency in her tone cut through the ambience, wrapping tightly around Sarah's chest. "Would you have reached out if it wasn't for them?" Sarah could not help but let the bitterness seep into her words. Each syllable slammed against the fragile walls she had constructed around her heart. "I wouldn't, at least, not without reason," Lisa confessed, her earlier bravado flickering for a brief moment. "But I've realized they're part of our story too. I don't want them to grow up in the shadow of our past." The familiar pang of guilt whispered in Sarah's ear. How many times had she shielded her boys from the storms of her history? How many secrets had she buried, hoping they'd never resurface? Would Lisa's presence force concessions she wasn't ready to make? "Okay," Sarah said slowly, sensing her resolve slipping, but she swallowed her fear. "What do you propose?" As Lisa began to share her perspective, her struggles as a mother overwhelmed by the weight of their shared past, Sarah felt a shift within herself. Each word carved away at the facade she had maintained, revealing shortcomings she had long avoided. Lisa wasn't the villain she had painted in her mind, she was another survivor wrestling with scars of her own. Listening to Lisa, Sarah discovered empathy growing alongside her apprehension. It was a revelation about her own capacity to forgive, and in that moment she realized she was not just a victim of circumstance, she possessed the power to dictate her narrative. "Maybe it's time to start anew," Lisa suggested, tentative yet hopeful. "For their sakes." The idea resonated in Sarah's core, a nagging aspiration she had fiercely protected. But would stepping toward a future that included Lisa mean unearthing the very bones she thought she had buried for good? "Let us talk about this more," Sarah replied, her heart galloping in her chest as she reached for the boundaries of her comfort zone, stretching them just a little further. As they exchanged stories and tentative agreements, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was not just a conversation, it was a pivotal juncture. The more they shared, the more Sarah could feel herself reconstructing an identity woven together with the past while striving for something better. Yet, as the clock ticked on, a sudden thought jolted her. Was she truly ready to open that door? Could this new understanding withstand the weight of their history? Uncertainty loomed, but a daring thought nestled itself in Sarah's mind. This encounter might change everything. And just as she prepared to dive deeper, the door swung open, a bell chiming with unwelcome familiarity. A figure stepped in, a man with an air of confidence sharpened by wealth, unmistakably out of place in their intimate dialogue. He scanned the room and locked eyes with Sarah, igniting an immediate ripple of recognition and curiosity. Who was this newcomer, and what role would he play in Sarah's evolving story? As Sarah sat with Lisa, the unexpected intrusion of an unfamiliar presence sent a jolt through the room. The man who had just entered was impeccably dressed, his demeanor exuding an air of authority and confidence that perfectly contrasted with the vulnerability of their discussion. James? Sarah's voice barely escaped her lips, the shock rendering the scenery around her hazy. Just moments ago, she had been staring at her past, ready to confront it, and now the sudden appearance of her old friend felt like a reinvigorating gust of wind amid her storm. He gave a slight inclination of his head, recognition dawning on his features. But this was no mere visit, it was a flashpoint. As he approached their table, both Sarah and Lisa exchanged glances etched with uncertainty. Where did he fit? Was he a bridge to the future or a reminder of past choices? Sorry to interrupt, James began, glancing from Sarah to Lisa, tension crackling in the air around them. I didn't expect to see you here, Sarah. His voice radiated warmth, but there was a hint of caution in it, as if weighing the unspoken complications lying beneath the surface. Neither did I, she confessed, the corners of her mouth twitching into a small smile, one that felt foreign yet reassuring. There was an undeniable comfort in his presence, one that began to chip away at the towering hold of anxiety. You two look deep in conversation, he observed, his brow furrowing slightly. Is everything all right? This was the pivotal moment Sarah had anticipated, yet here was James, bearing witness to both her vulnerability and the burgeoning complexity of her identity. Lisa was just reminding me of the importance of clarifying our histories, Sarah stated, her heart racing. Especially for the boys. I can see that. He nodded, stepping into the void. I think it's critical we all understand how our past shapes us, so we can build a future where Ethan and Noah feel safe and loved. In that instant, Sarah sensed a transformation unfold. It wasn't only about the confrontation with Lisa anymore, but the opportunity to weave a tapestry of shared understanding. They all bore the weight of their pasts, yet there was potential to forge a new collective narrative, strengthened through honesty and connection. I didn't come here just to reconnect with you, Sarah, James confessed, his eyes reflecting a newfound determination. I've been thinking about our past, about my responsibilities. I want to be an active part of Ethan and Noah's lives. You deserve support, and I want to be a father to my children. The gravity of his declaration washed over her like a cleansing wave, unveiling a kaleidoscope of hope that had long been buried beneath layers of fear. Not only could she be honest with James, but there was the opportunity for their family to flourish, amid the remnants of their complex history. Can we all sit together? Lisa proposed gently, surprising them both with her openness. Taking a deep breath, Sarah nodded, signaling James to join them at the table. The three of them formed an unexpected trio, threading together their stories in pursuit of unity. As they began to exchange thoughts, Sarah felt an uplifting shift within. Experiences once tinged with shadows transformed into lighthouses guiding them through the chaos. Together, they shared burdens and hopes, finding common ground while breaking down walls that had dictated their separate lives for too long. Maybe I should have reached out sooner, Lisa admitted as she peeled back layers of regret. I wanted to protect the kids from our past mistakes, but I see now that hiding only prolongs the cycle. Together we can break that cycle, James affirmed, his tone optimistic yet sincere. We owe it to the boys and ourselves to redefine our narratives. For the first time, Sarah felt a remarkable lightness as the weight of her past seemed to lift. Each revelation breathed life into their conversation, and as her own barriers crumbled, she could feel empowerment growing within her, the understanding that every step forward required facing fears with courage. In the heart of that cafe, they began to outline next steps, the plans to include Ethan and Noah as a united front, focusing on fostering relationships that flourished instead of festered. As they set intentions for the future, Sarah felt an unwavering sense of purpose mandating her actions. Her children would no longer be shrouded in fears of family dichotomies, rather, they would emerge from the experience rooted in resilience, growth, and love. By the time they finished their coffees, laughter danced lightly among them, and so did an evolving sense of connection. The conversation had reached a pivotal moment of resolution. Sarah felt confident. She had confronted her past, transformed the existing relationships, and taken monumental steps toward establishing a future where Ethan and Noah would feel the strength of their family weave around them, resilient against any challenge. As they emerged from the cafe into the golden light of the afternoon, Sarah sensed the landscape of her life had shifted. No longer did she linger in the shadows of doubt and regret, she thrived in the acknowledgement of growth and newfound resolve. With renewed conviction, she realized that she could not only face her past but also embrace her present, fostering a legacy of strength for her children. In that pivotal moment, something shifted within her, from a mother wrestling with insecurities to one branded with undeniable resilience. Today marked the dawn of a journey filled with hope, one ready to embrace every possibility that lay ahead. Now is your moment to be part of this transformative journey. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss out on the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below with your reactions and theories about how Sarah's journey unfolds. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this life-changing conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.